Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. I'm Joanna Livengood. I'm the Department of Energy's Argonne Site Office Manager. And it's been my pleasure to welcome Secretary of Energy Rick Perry to Argonne today. He's had quite a day. He's actually seen both of our DOE national laboratories in the greater Chicago area. So he spent the morning at Fermilab and the afternoon at Argonne. So he's seen a tremendous amount of research all the way from high energy physics to all the multi-program type work we do here. You know, as the department's senior leader at Argonne, it's really a privilege of mine to be able to share all the exciting world-class scientific research and development work that's happening here at Argonne. It takes all of us. Collectively, we accomplish incredible work for the nation. We use our scientific curiosity, our innovation, our quest for scientific and operational excellence to guide us. This only happens because of all of your efforts. So thank you for coming today. It also requires strong partnerships shared among the Department of Energy, Chicago Argonne, and Argonne National Laboratory teams. We work collaboratively together every single day to deliver this science mission for the nation. So although it's been a long day for the Secretary, I'm very pleased that he asked to meet with all of you, the broader DOE, M&O, and Argonne National Laboratory community. Because again, collectively, you keep this laboratory at the leading edge of science discovery and innovation. I'm personally appreciative to Secretary Perry for all the time he spent with us today and meeting many of you as he went along through his visit. So now let me turn the podium over to Argonne National Laboratory's Director, Dr. Paul Kearns, to provide a few introductory remarks. Paul?
Thank you very much, Joanna. Thank you all for being here this afternoon. I think we're in for a real treat. As Joanna said, we're very pleased to have the opportunity to welcome Secretary Rick Perry here to the laboratory this afternoon. He's really had, as Joanna commented on, a full day of touring. I really appreciate the time that he's taken, though, to see firsthand the great science and engineering we do here at the laboratory. But also along the way, he's had personal conversations, with many employees of the laboratory, which I really commend the Secretary for taking the time out to get to know our staff and the great talents they bring to really some very significant challenges. I'm inspired every day by the work that you do. It really, if you will, gives me a great deal of energy. It keeps me engaged. It really is inspiring for me. And it's really why, I've devoted my career to really being in the National Laboratory System and really driving great science and great engineering in that way. So my compliments to you in that regard. Many of you have been asking, when is the Secretary going to visit, as I've made my rounds at the laboratory. Well, I'm pleased to say he's here today. And so, at short notice, he just called last Tuesday, Wednesday, I believe, and said, I'd like to visit Argonne next Tuesday. And so we're really pleased that his calendar opened up a bit and he was able to visit with us here today. He's seen a lot, and we're really excited to have him say a few words. I am pleased that he didn't visit last week, because I suspect the only thing he would remember about Argonne is the minus 20-degree wind chill that we encountered last week. So I'm very pleased the weather improved today as well. I'm going to conclude with just a little background on the Secretary. There's quite a bit that one could talk about in terms of his accomplishments and his credentials, but I'll just hit a few highlights. Just a little background on the Secretary. He was the 14th U.S. Secretary of Energy. Secretary Perry is a veteran of the United States Air Force, a former farmer and rancher, and the longest-serving governor in Texas history, having led our country's second most populous state and the world's 12th largest economy from 2000 to 2015. Secretary Perry grew up the son of tenant farmers in a tiny, by his own description, West Texas community of Paint Creek. He was active in scouting and earned distinction as an Eagle Scout. The Secretary was one of the first in his family to go to college, earning a degree in animal science from Texas A&M University. Between 1972 and 1977, Secretary Perry served in the U.S. Air Force flying C-130 tactical aircraft in Europe and in the Middle East. Prior to being elected a lieutenant governor of Texas in 1998, he served 2 terms as the Texas Commissioner of Agriculture and 3 terms in the Texas House of Representatives. So please give a warm Argonne welcome to Secretary Rick Perry. Thank you.
Paul, thank you very much. I don't know whether it was just my bad acoustics back there or not, but you introduced me as a senator. That's awesome, baby. Go back to D.C. and tell them that. I'm moving up. I don't know, is moving up, would a senator be moving up? Maybe not. I want to talk about your congressman here just a second, and a good man. And I can't think of anyone who could do a better job of representing both Argonne and Fermi than this gentleman, because this is where he worked. He's one of you, and he's really been helpful to me from the standpoint of just kind of explaining to a layperson some of the things that go on here. So, Bill, I want to say thank you for not only spending the day with us, but for your public service. It's not easy business to be in the public arena today, but thanks to you and your wife for not only your service to our labs, but to our country. So thank you. Paul and Joanna, thank you both for this afternoon. And we started out over at Fermi and did a day's worth of work there, and then came over here and did another day's worth of work here. So we doubled up, but it's been a fascinating process for me. And one of the things I wanted to do, those of you that are up in the balcony, and I think there's some folks down in the basement that are watching via video, and I want to come and tell you how proud I am to get to be on your team. I'm never ceased to be amazed at the fascinating things and the really interesting people that work at the national labs. So I hope I reflect that in my day-to-day observations that I put out. My Instagram account is generally something about a national lab at least once a week, and so it's a good way for me. And I consider one of my jobs to be to promote what happens in our national labs. Rick, we were talking about the computing side of what you guys are doing over there with getting ready for exascale and then the next level, wherever and whenever that may be, and just the exciting part of what goes on in our national labs. And so I hope that not only my excitement about that, but my passion about that is reflective as we go forward, because I think that's one of my jobs and my roles is to make sure that the people of this country, or for that matter, people around the world who we work with, who rely upon the United States for the next big thing, whether it's in the medical field, of which you all right here in APS, working on things that literally can save people's lives. I mean, when you think about what you all are doing and the opportunity to really change the world, I mean, I hope all of you recognize how blessed you are to be able to get to work in such an extraordinary environment. And the other side of it is the Secretary of Energy, like I would suggest all cabinet members, need to be a good manager. And so I come with a fairly decent resume of managing the 12th largest entity in the world, state of Texas, for about 14 years, and it's the best job I ever had. I'm totally biased about that. But I tell people, I said, that was the best job I ever had, but the coolest job I've ever had is this one. And it's these labs play a major role in that coolness of this job. And many of you may not, just in your day-to-day life, you know what goes on at Argonne. You work on your projects here. You work with the universities. You work with private sector. You have various and sundry interest out there. But you may or may not really know the breadth of what the Department of Energy is engaged in. And I'll give you a good example for me, and this has been an ongoing education, for me as well. As I came to this job, the president called me in I think December of 2016, and it was a pretty short job interview. It was fascinating. Really, seriously, man. I'm sitting here. I've never applied for a job in my life. It's just kind of an odd thing, the way that I went through life. I went off to college. I became a pilot in the United States Air Force. And then I came back and worked with my dad at the farm. And then I got into elected office, and I applied for work every couple of years with the people of the state of Texas, but I actually never sat down and filled out a resume and sat down on somebody's desk and had a job interview. It's just an odd reality in my life. And here I find myself, 66 years old, sitting across the desk from this guy who had The Apprentice show on television, applying for a job in his cabinet. And it was just a fascinating little moment in my life. And we had a short conversation about the energy industry and this and that and what have you. He said, "Look, Perry," he said, "here's what I want you to do." He said, "I want you to go do for American Energy what you did for Texas." And that process for me is, my job is to go promote, yes, this very broad industry that's everything from nuclear energy and all the different aspects of that, through all of the different forms of energy that this country develops, whether it's fossil fuels, whether it's hydro, whether it's renewables, whatever it may be, and promote that agency. And the more I get to know who you are and what impacts we have, the more interesting and, quite frankly, thrilling this business of being the secretary is. And I'll give you just a little anecdotal story. So my first outing as the secretary in a international sense was go to Rome to the G7. There were myself and 6 of my counterparts in the countries, I think France, Italy, Japan, Germany. And we had our event. I was getting back on the aircraft. I was going to, I think, Frankfurt to catch a flight back. So anyway, we were getting on the plane at Rome, and a fellow walks by. I'm sitting there, and he walks by, and he does a double take. And Bill, you know, from time to time you'll be somewhere, and someone will take that second look, and they know you, or you look like somebody, and I saw that, and I realized that he was fixing to speak to me, and he had recognized me. And I don't know, from time to time, does somebody recognize me because I was the governor of Texas for 14 years, ran for president 2 times, or I was on Dancing with the Stars. Who knows? He said, "Secretary Perry, I work for you." And I said, well, I hope you're happy about that. and he said, oh, yeah, you know. And I said, well, and he had his family. He has 2 little girls, his wife, and he was kind of walking them down the aisle. And I said, when we get all settled in here and leveled off, I'll come visit with you, which I did. And after just a few pleasantries, I asked him, I said, where do you work in this part of the world? And he said, Interpol. So at that particular point in time, it started becoming a little bit more intriguing to me, the tentacles of this agency, the breadth and the depth of which the Department of Energy is involved, obviously, in his case, making sure that any nuclear materials on the non-proliferation side we were tracking. So the work that you do is indeed fascinating. What we can do together to make sure that the people of this country, our members of Congress, the administration, understand the importance of what you do, making sure that we have the resources and we have the right people in the right places to be able to affect the future of the world. And that's what you do. I mean, whether it's on the computing side, whether it's on the APS side, you know, what you all are doing on the nuclear side and the small modular reactors. I mean, these are life-changing properties that we have the ability to affect. I don't have to wake up and wonder, gee, am I at a place that can really make a difference in people's lives? I do not have to wake up in the morning and wonder that. I know that I'm working in one of the most dynamic, influential, consequential places on earth. And it's not because of the agency. It's not because of the mission. It's not because of, Congress has said, I want you to go do X. It's because of the people. It's because of the men and women who have been drawn to this. I was walking in here, and I picked this up. It was there, and I picked it up. This is the Next Generation Society. And I sat down with a couple of the representatives, the younger professionals that are here. I hope I didn't scare them off. No, Heather's there, and Florent did I do well, Florent? I'm working on my French. Florent, but this is important stuff. And those of you who are a little more senior, a little more mature, I'll let you figure out whether you fit that category or not. Take the time to recognize that we're going to hand off to a really bright, capable generation of professionals. It's the same reason that we do the STEM program, and we recruit these young, bright kids out of middle school to high school to bring them into the profession. When I was growing up in the 60s, we talked about this, the nuclear energy. I mean, the kids that were going to go to school to be nuclear engineers, they were the smart ones. They were the ones that were on a fast track. And somewhere along the way, and I recognized that we had issues with 3 Mile Island, with Chernobyl, with Fukushima, and the nuclear energy side of things kind of got pushed back to the backside, if you will. I hope I can help change that, frankly, because I am a very strong proponent of a civil nuclear program in this country. Because I do think it's one of those very important parts of the energy portfolio, and I'm an all of the above guy. Some people think, well, Perry, you're just from Texas, you like oil and gas. Well, I don't have a problem with oil and gas. It's a good thing. I remind him, I said, while I was the governor of Texas, we developed the wind energy in our state more than any other state in the nation. We recognized that it was important for us to have a diversified portfolio. We created more wind energy in the state of Texas while I was the governor in that 14-year period of time than all but 5 countries. I used to say 5 other countries, and people kept explaining to me, said, well, Texas isn't a country. And I told them, Bill, I said, we were once. But anyway, I think the work that you do and when I think about your history, our history now that I'm a part of, and this is important work. I have no idea how long I stay in the role that I am, but I want you to know that I will work every day to tell your story in as many venues as I can. I go to Davos at the end of the month. I'll be talking to leaders around the world about what's happening at the Department of Energy, the fascinating work that we're doing with our friends at CERN, with other places around the world. At Fermi and Argonne, this is an international community. When I was over at Fermi, I thought, if you weren't from Italy, you can't get a job over here. I mean, it's like, just kidding. But they said, well, of course, Fermi was an Italian. Anyway, but my point is, I'm going to be in India at the end of February, Argentina in June. There are going to be a lot of opportunities for me to go share what you do and to tell your story, because I think your story is about America of the 21st century. The world is counting on us to get these big things right. We got to be smart about it. We've got to be structurally sound about it. When I say structurally sound, I'm talking about I got to be able to stand up in front of the budgeteers in Congress. I got to be able to stand up in front of the American people. I got to be able to stand up in front of the administration and say, let me explain to you why those resources are important and why we're spending them right. I have to go back in with APS and say, let me tell you what this $770 million is going to do and why it makes a difference that we do this and why, quite frankly, this is a bargain. But that's my commitment, because I think I understand it and I know I'm passionate about it. And I want us to be successful. Because if we're successful, there are places around the world that we don't even know about that are going to be affected in a positive and powerful way. There's going to be people's lives that are literally saved because of the work that goes on at a Department of Energy National Lab. I am incredibly proud to be on your team. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary.
As you know, I'm new in my role here, much like you're new in your role. And when I talk about Argonne, I've been talking about our science changing the world. So thank you for echoing those comments today. How do we do that? Really by our ideas, the ideas we put on the table, the ideas we put into conversation, and the way we answer questions. And we also do it by the rigor and the quality of the research we do here at the laboratory and the operations we do here at the laboratory. And lastly, by the impact that we deliver. And you've spoken very effectively, I believe, to all those items, so thank you very much. I do appreciate it. We've got time for just a few questions, and I wanted to start actually with a question on early career, because the Secretary spoke to that, and I know he's met a number of early career scientists throughout the laboratory today as he's toured the facility. So how about a question from an early career scientist, please? Heather.
Go ahead. Yes, thank you.
As Paul mentioned, we have a lot of early career scientists working in all different areas in the lab. Do you have any advice you can give to early career scientists and engineers?
Don't get siloed. And what I mean by that is that you are, the tendency may be for you, here's your area of expertise. This is where you're going to get really, really good at this. And that's good. Get really good at it. But don't be afraid to get outside of your comfort zone and go do some things. Somebody said, what in the hell were you thinking getting on Dancing with the Stars? And I said, two things. Number one, I said, they gave me the opportunity to have to talk to a completely different audience than I would normally talk to, which is absolutely true. And I said, and they let me talk about veterans issues, which I'm passionate about. So, but it was not easy. The potential to totally embarrass yourself was there, and it was really hard. I told somebody, I said, this is the hardest thing that I've done in my life, with the exception of pilot training. And I said, and it's kind of they're kind of alike, it's time and space, it's thinking ahead, it's physically difficult. You got to be thinking, I got a whole new appreciation for professional ballroom dancers, I'm telling you. But my point is, don't be afraid to get outside of your comfort zone. Yes, you got to be very, very good at what you do. Number one, you wouldn't be here if you weren't already. But as you grow in your area of expertise, don't be afraid to go get out there in a place that you think, well, maybe I'm not supposed to. Don't worry about it. Don't be afraid to fail, okay? It's okay to fall down. It's having the courage to get back up. And you may have to have a partner who reaches over and helps you get back up. That happens to be where this program becomes really important. Some of you more mature people in the audience, your job may be to reach down and help the next generation to get back up after they failed. Okay? Cool.
We've also touched just briefly today, but didn't have a lot of time to talk about our work in national security. I know it's a priority certainly for the nation and certainly for you personally. So I thought maybe the next question might be national security. Scott, please.
Thank you. Scott Dunlop, Field Intelligence Element Director. And my question is now that you've had a chance to visit many of the national labs, what is your vision for their future and their role in national security?
We live in a really dangerous world. Our responsibility statutorily is to make sure that our electrical grid is secure. It's one of the reasons that I've tried to push a conversation forward over the course of the last months about the reliability of the electrical grid. Inside of that is the issue of cybersecurity. Now, obviously, it's broader than just our electrical control panels, our electrical grid. I mean, it covers a big area, but we're involved in that. And we've got 3 of our labs, CyberCore, I think INL, PPL, Sandia. But this is a really broad issue, but the cybersecurity side of this thing is the one that I worry about more than anything out there. We got to get this right. We got to get it right in a hurry. Unfortunately, we don't have the luxury of sitting around and looking at our belly buttons much. We got to be actively engaged in putting into place these security processes. The nuclear side of the house and the weapons side of the house, that's, it kind of speaks for itself. The modernization, the keeping them safe, to make sure, I've got great faith that NNSA and the leadership over there, General Klotz, that he's shown over the course of his years of being there, that side of the house is in very good shape. But on the cyber side, I still think we need to be pushing hard, pushing fast to make sure that we get in place the protections that could really affect our lives in a very negative way. So I don't mean to sound too much of an alarm, but I'm concerned about it. And the national labs are going to play as important a role, if not the most important role, obviously working with our private sector partners, but we got work to do. Okay.
I've been getting the signal. Just one more question. So let me, one of the things that we talked about today as we toured the laboratory is kind of work outside the traditional DOE kind of portfolio with the NIH and VA. And so I think a question really on kind of expanding the DOE, putting the great tools we have here at the laboratory, like the Advanced Photon Source and Leadership Computing, to work for other agencies and other sponsors. So is there a question along those lines, I think? Check, please.
Yes, hello, Mr. Secretary.
Howdy. Where are you from?
I'm from Chicago.
Hey, it's not Italy.
No.
I'm going to get in so much trouble for that. Oh, my God. That's okay.
My question is, we talk of the DOE laboratories as being national laboratories. And so my question is, how do you see the national laboratories contributing beyond the DOE energy mission in support of other cabinet-level departments?
And Paul, thank you, Chip. Paul brought up a really interesting synergy, if you will, cross-pollination over with NIH. I spoke just very briefly about my passion about veterans. And interestingly, the Department of Energy has almost 40% of the employees of DOE are veterans. So, and I had no idea that there was such a high number until I got there and started really getting my arms around the people and their roles and what have you. But and my interest in brain science, and this is the neurological side of what's going on with a group of young men and women who have been at war now for coming on 15 years, and the impact that it's having on this generation. I don't think unless you have a loved one that's involved in that, we as a people may not understand, because we're test pilots right now. We've never been at war for this length of period of time. We don't know how much of an impact this is having. It's serious, and I'm a bit of a public critic about our government's role in that, particularly the VA over the course of the previous years. And so I think it's important, and DOE has done this type of work before, and from the standpoint of brain science and the electrical side of what's happening in the brain and these national labs, bingo, my light went off when I got here. It's kind of like we need to have a focus and do some non-traditional, out-of-the-box things to work on veterans' health care. Well, what I found was I wasn't the first person to ever think about that or talk about that, because there was what's called the MVP program. What's MVP? Million Veterans Project. Oh yeah, Million Veterans Project. Going to get 1 million veterans, take blood, get their DNA. Ray's going to run it through all of his Rick's going to run it through all of his supercomputers over there, and we're going to have this massive amount of data, never done before in the world, of DNA, of being able to then, and APS is probably going to be doing some stuff over there on the proton side to identify the medicines that we can. Anyway, there's some incredibly cool stuff that we're going to be doing on veterans' health. And we're standing up an office, and it gets into the get outside of your silo. This is good advice, not just for a young DOE employee, but it's good for the agency. The agencies need to not silo themselves. Don't get stuck in, this is all we ever do, this is our little comfort zone. Get outside and coordinate with, cross-pollinate with. Don't duplicate. As a matter of fact, we may be able to show other agencies that, hey, we can do some things better than you can do them. Or we don't need to be doing this, you're doing it fine. I mean, let's have that conversation. And I want the VA, the Health and Human Services, the Department of Defense, and the DOE to all be working together on some veterans' health issues, particularly dealing with post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury. And we're getting there. But the point is, this makes a lot of sense. And this is what people want to see government. They want to see a product, and they want to see help. They want to see government giving them hope that the future of the world is good because of what we're doing. Our tax dollars are being spent well. And I happen to think this is one of the places that we can do it, and we can do it in a really impactful way. And quite frankly, helping some people that we made a promise to that we haven't, in my opinion, lived up to our part of the bargain as well as we should. So there's some great opportunities here of the DOE working with NIH, with the VA, with Health and Human Services, with DARPA over at DOD, working on some of these healthcare issues for our veterans. And so anyway, listen, thank you all for letting me be on your team. God bless you.